Hello, everybody. We're back here with John. I've had so many requests to get John back on my channel. He's one of the most popular guests I've ever had, and he's been kind enough to sit down with me today. I'm sorry about the rain, and he's going to clear up some things and tell us some more about his life after Vietnam and what he did, where he went. There's amazing stories there. So thanks to John again, John, for sitting down with me again. Go ahead and tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Okay, after Vietnam, I traveled to Southeast Asia and then went to Thailand, and then I started to collect rare artifacts and porcelain pieces of art and porcelain ware and metal, bronze, and
where did you store all this stuff at? When you're collecting these things, where did you store them at?
Well, I had put them in. I had a place where I stored. A friend of mine had them.
Okay.
And this lady friend kept them for me. And I used to work with art dealers in Southeast Asia.
Oh.
And I would travel. Some of the places I would go is the diggings in northeast Thailand, where the Sawanalak kilns are, where they've unearthed some rare 14th century ceramic pieces of art, and I got into this field as an antiquarian because people had requested me if I had come across any valuable pieces of art that they would be interested in, and I did make good income in this field because I did secure some very valuable pieces from people that were connected in Thailand with the government, and they had access to some of the rare diggings, the findings that they got out of the diggings.
So who is buying this stuff? Americans or Europeans?
One of the people, some of them up in Chiang Mai, northeast Thailand, in the northern part of Thailand. It was a very lucrative area, so I would take it. And there were people that were interested in getting these pieces, in acquiring them. And mainly it was in Hong Kong. A lot of people in Hong Kong were interested in that, as well as in the United States. So I found it economically rewarding to work in this field as an antiquarian, and then I acquired some good pieces of art, of which I still have some. And
you have them here in the Philippines, or you have them at?
I do have some of them here in the Philippines, which I've collected. Some of them are rare 14th century pieces. I have had them appraised, and they go way back into the. It's a lot of it is connected with the world of Buddhism, and they came from tombs and diggings that connected people were able to gather without much red tape, and then I would purchase it, and anyway, there was a market for valuable antiques, Asian antiques, basically. So this took me to Southeast Asia, then on up into Japan, and then I had a friend, and one of the members of his family was collecting rare Tibetan tankas and objects from Tibet that were very rare, paintings and that were very much in demand in Tokyo in the market. So this, I worked along with him on that, and then also selling some of my pieces that I had gathered in Southeast Asia, red sandstone or alabaster or even wood, mainly in the Buddhistic artwork, whether it was bronze, but I did have some valuable ceramic pieces from Thailand, which were ceramic and 14th century items, which are listed in famous books of art.
Wow.
Now in publication. This is like a tepanon. A tepanon is a goddess, ceramic and about that high, and it comes from the 14th century period, very delicate, found in burial, I was in competition with some of the museums in Japan that were after these pieces, and I did gain one very valuable piece on them that they wished, and I might even sell it back to the museum in Fukuoka, Japan. They were interested in that piece. But,
so what kind of price range are we talking about here, like back then?
I would say roughly anywhere between $5,000 to $30,000.
Back then?
Oh no, if you're talking.
Oh, you mean today's money?
Well, I've been out of it for a number of years, but back then I would say it could bring in several $1,000s.
A lot of money back then.
Yes.
You could buy a Picasso back then for like $6,000.
These are museum quality pieces that were unearthed out of diggings that went on mainly in Thailand, northeast Thailand, and the diggings, the Sawanakala diggings in Thailand was where a lot of my pieces came from, by people in the Thai military, like colonels and people like that had access to the diggings. And then also the market was very much in demand in Tokyo, Japan, and a friend of mine was also selling material from Tibet that was in demand by upscale rich people in Tokyo, millionaire people that wanted Buddhist art mainly, and objects. So from Japan, then I then traveled to Russia, and I took the Trans-Siberian Railway, and
what was that like? I've heard all about that railroad. What was that experience like?
I took the boat from Japan to Nakatka in the far east in Soviet Russia. Nakatka. Then from there, a train to Khabarovsk. I think it was Khabarovsk, and then on across to Irkutsk, Lake Baikal region.
What was it like on this train back then? Give us a picture.
It was a very beautiful experience because I was in a compartment. It was a middle-class compartment, and I was with, there were 4 beds in there, and I bedded down with 2 Russians, who were very interesting people, and as I spoke no Russian, the people were very helpful to me in assisting me traveling. But one of my interesting things was traveling with an American girl. She was an American girl that had a cast on her leg. She had been in an accident. She had been in Korea, working in Korea, and I helped assist carrying her bag for her, and we traveled Siberia, and then.
What was Siberia like?
Siberia was very beautiful and rustic in the days. This is back.
So you were there in the summertime, or?
I was there in the month of August, September, and it was very beautiful. The taiga was turning gold, and the leaves and the vast forests of Russia were more or less undisturbed at that time. And I would pass the cemeteries, which were all red. There were many red monuments, and I asked what that was. And they said that these are Communist Party members, and when they die, they have a red tombstone to signify their party members. And it was interesting, colorful. But in Siberia, I visited the Buryati people. It's an Asiatic people living in Russia, and in the Yakuty area. They're called Buryati, the tribe of the Buryati. They're Mongolian people, and I had a girl I met in Mongolia, in Siberia, and she was very friendly. Her and her cousin, very pretty, beautiful girls that invited me to their village, and they gave me some music of their songs, of their folk songs. But this girl opened my eyes, and she was very friendly, and I had an insight into the Buryati culture and their way of life, which was very unique and very different from Western Russia, because Russia is actually two spheres. East of the Ural Mountains is European Russia, and west of the Ural Mountains becomes Asia. And so being in the Asian region, I was very interested to learn more of these people who were the ancestors of the American Indians. That's where genetically later on it was found that the Plains Indians evolved from this area, right from those tribes in that area. They traced it genetically. So as I experienced this and the friendship of these people in the Siberian area, there was no hostility. The White Russians were more suspicious and more aloof.
Yeah. Well, what were they like, these people? Like, what was their customs like and their food?
They were very, they weren't more tribalistic. They were very, like if you were a friend of one of them, the whole group or family would introduce you to the other members of the people.
And how were you communicating?
One of them had worked for the ministry of the Russian Ministry of in the foreign service, and spoke some English.
Okay.
And this was the translator. So I didn't have trouble with that. But friendship was the thing that opened up all the doors. Friendship opened up the avenues of communication. So I had an insight into their villages and then I traveled around Lake Baikal, and it was an experience because it's the largest freshwater lake in the world and the deepest and the oldest lake in the world, over a mile deep. And as I traveled around the lake to some of these villages, in companion with the Buryati people, these friends of mine, it was a beautiful experience. The weather was nice. Siberia in late autumn was beautiful. And
but you were there looking for art?
No. This time,
just passing through.
I was interested in some of the ancient birch bark writings that they had, the early writing history, which is exhibited in one of the museums in Irkutsk. It's in a hermetically sealed museum that's climatically controlled so they don't disintegrate. And the curator was a friend of mine, and she and I became very good friends, and we traveled to Moscow later.
Wow.
So she gave me an insight into the ancient script writing. Their script goes from, I believe, right to left.
Yeah, I've heard that.
See, so that's where I had an insight.
Is it called cuneiform, or I can't remember what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned about this, which I had never been taught or knew about back in my earlier days in school in America. So it was a completely new world that was opened up to me, and the curator of the museum explained the writings to me and the significance of them, and she was very beautiful, and we traveled to Moscow later. But my stay in Siberia in Irkutsk, this is a city on the Angara River, which is the large city there. It's the sixth largest city in Russia. Now it has over 600,000 people, but at that time far less, maybe less than half. But it has 352 rivers, I believe, coming into the lake, and one river going out. So the water was the best water I ever drank in my life, and I still have the bottle that I took back from Lake Baikal, of the Baikal water, which was even better than some of the papal water from Italy, the springs of Italy. But my time in Siberia, I've been there several times after that, back to Siberia and the lake, and I always enjoy visiting the Lake Baikal area.
We had some people from Siberia staying for 2 months at Dulce Vita when I was there, and they were very friendly, lovely people, husband, wife, and their little boy.
Oh, I would have liked to have met them.
And very nice people.
Are they still there?
No, they went home. They went home about 2 months ago. The Russians they came to visit their Russian friends. They were also from Siberia, but they went home too because their visa, they had been there for 3 years.
Oh.
So they had to leave.
Oh.
But yeah, nice people.
Very nice people, Mark. But the people that I had contact with mostly at this time were Buryati, were Asiatic Russian people.
Were they speaking Russian? They had their own language.
They had their own language. They did speak Russian because it's mandatory, and their language is spoken. Because at one time when Russia conquered the Far East, there were great battles when they defeated the Buryati, the indigenous people. I believe it was the 1700s sometime, when the Russians with the Cossacks and the Tatars and the armies were moved into the Siberian area to take over and conquer that region. It was very bloody fighting. The people resisted, just like the American Indians resisted on the plains when we went out to take over the Great Plains away from the American Indian. Those people resisted the Russians coming.
So this was like the late 1960s, right?
Yes.
Now, was there any hostility?
Did I say about Sergei, the spy?
No, we'll do that next.
Okay.
Now, was there any hostility or suspicion of an American being there? 'Cause this is like the height of the Cold War, right?
It was the height of the Cold War. There was great suspicion, but not by these people. These people were very amenable and open to me, more than the Russian, ethnic Russians were.
But I mean, as you were traveling through Russia, did you get like interrogated or questioned?
It was very interesting. I was shadowed, and I'll tell you how that happened. There was a Russian girl that had traveled with me, and she would always be, she traveled with me to a certain region in Siberia, then we lost contact and she proceeded on to Moscow. But she was a handicapped girl. She had a cast on her leg.
Right, you mentioned that before,
and I helped carry her bag for her. We became very good. I think she came from Tennessee somewhere. And she was a very nice person, and we shared a lot of laughter and jokes and all. But I'll relate what happened with her later on.
Okay.
So my time in the Lake Baikal area of Siberia, the water was the best water I ever drank in my life. It was unfiltered. It was untreated with chlorine, no chlorification. It was pure water, and I saw the white seal, the only freshwater seals in the world, called nerpa. The Russians call them the nerpa, and they're beautiful seals that exist only in the Lake Baikal.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a seal. It's a freshwater seal only found in Lake Baikal. And then the Russians took me to the place where they threw across the lake in the war of 1905 when they were rushing reinforcements to the Japanese front, to Manchuria, to stop the Japanese after the Battle of, I think it was Takashima, the great battle. There was a sea battle that the Japanese defeated the Russian Navy at a battle at the Straits of Takashima, something like that, in the Port Arthur area of China, Manchuria, and the Russians were rushing reinforcements across because Siberia is a long way from western Russia.
Right.
And so what they did, the Trans-Siberian Railway, having been made in the 1890s, completed, they got the men as far to the lake, and then they threw railroad tracks right across the lake in the ice being 10 feet thick or something like that, the depths of Siberia. And they put the tracks on the ice, and they took locomotives across the ice carrying supplies and men. A lot of the Cossacks were brought in. They were fierce fighters to fight the Japanese infantry. And they rushed the supplies across the ice, and then when the ice thawed in the summer, the tracks, everything melted down into the bottom. But it was a very savage war, and I visited some of the battle sites there in that area.
So how long were you actually in Siberia?
Well, this is another area that was
part
part
of-
into
yeah.
the Dalian Peninsula of China.
Yeah.
That was Manchuria. But in Siberia, I spent a few months in this area.
And what again was your reason for going there? What was your mission?
I was friends with, I had a friend in Russia at the Russian embassy,
Okay.
and he arranged my visa and my trip to Russia, but it was underwritten by Japan, JTB, Japan Travel Bureau. They handled all my accommodations for me. And it was very good. JTB did a very good job. And on my boat trip and then my transportation, but it was more of an open itinerary, which was not easy to get, but my Russian friend assisted me. And before leaving Tokyo, I had great desire to meet the wife of Richard Sorge, considered to be the greatest spy of the Second World War. And Richard Sorge was a Russian who infiltrated the German High Command and became the German ambassador to Japan's valet and attaché. This is the height of the Second World War. Sorge had worked his way up in the ranks, becoming a newspaper man, a journalist, and then while in Tokyo, he was a wild guy, had a motorcycle, and then he got married to a beautiful Japanese girl, and he would drink with the SS officers at a club where the German officers used to drink, and he would gather information. But Sorge put together a spy ring, which is probably the greatest in the history of the Second World War. It utilized an American Japanese from, I believe, Little Tokyo, Los Angeles, German and his wife from Eastern Germany, I think, and at that time, but a part of Germany, and then one other person, and they had this spy ring. Sorge set it up in Tokyo, and he would put people in different areas, like the husband and wife, when the communication, they had the radio transformer and receiver. They would send messages to a Russian submarine that during the entire duration of the Second World War lay off the coast of Japan, off Tokyo somewhere. It was just there to get messages just from Sorge that were transmitted directly to Russia only for Stalin. Stalin's ears alone would get the message first. So the greatest information that was gotten, it was considered the highest triumph, I would say, of the Second World War, was when Sorge got information from the Japanese-American plant that he had there, who worked for the Ministry of Transportation in Tokyo, the Japanese Ministry of Transportation, and he informed Sorge that the Japanese army was being outfitted in summer uniforms. So when Sorge got that information, this is over 1 million men strong army that was ready to hit Siberia, because Hitler said hit them in the back to take the pressure. They were at the gates of Moscow. The Germans already had their long guns, and they were shelling the suburbs of Moscow. This is 26 miles out. The shells were coming in, and the shells were dropping in the suburbs of Moscow, and they're getting closer. It was a ring of steel. So Hitler says, hit them in the back and let's knock them out. Bring in 1 million Japanese at the back and hit the Russians from the back. We'll take them out and then we'll take care of the Western Front. So there was a great decision made in the Japanese cabinet. General Tojo, Premier Tojo, he was the wartime prime minister, and his general staff made the decision not to acquiesce Hitler and hit Russia in the Siberian area in Manchuria, but they went south for the oil fields in the Malacca Straits, Indonesia, Singapore. So they went to take Singapore and the Philippines. They went for the rubber and the oil. And when they did that, basically the Second World War was lost for Hitler, because 1 million Japanese went south, they took Singapore, and then successively all the countries in Southeast Asia, even Western Australia, or Darwin was bombed. But this man, Sorge, was captured, got into a motorcycle accident. He was a pretty wild guy, drank with the German and he was very friendly to the German ambassador. He confided many secrets, and he even got into his safe. He had access to that. He would get special papers.
Now you met this guy.
No, here's what happened. He was captured in 1943.
Yeah.
While in a motorcycle accident, while recovering in a hospital, he was unconscious and he was talking very strange words that were picked up by one of the doctors. And the doctor informed the German, one of the German staff came, and he says he's talking something very confidential about get these secrets and tell him not to. Anyway, this information was relayed to the Kampai, the Japanese secret police. And the Japanese police immediately put an investigation on, arrested Sorge, and then took him to a very notorious prison in Tokyo, and they tortured him and made him talk. Then they went to arrest the Japanese American at the Ministry of Communication. When they got him in, he was a third or fourth floor of the building of the ministry, he ran and dived out the window and committed suicide rather than be tortured by the Japanese. The other husband and wife were picked up by the Japanese and interred in Tokyo for the remainder of the war, and were eventually released back into East Germany later on. And the other person, I don't know what happened to him, but Sorge was tortured and was executed in a notorious prison, I forget the name, in Tokyo in 1944, I believe. And his wife and a little child was born. He had a son born to his wife. And the Russian government, to this day, gives support every month and a pension to that wife and to the child. And when I confronted the Russians, I said, why is Sorge so unknown in Russia for the greatest work he did in saving Russia? And they told me this as well. There was a consensus at the time that he talked too much. He gave out too much information. And I said, but anyone caught by the Japanese is going to tell every secret they ever knew, because they will know how to extract it from you, which they did, and then executed it. And they said, yes, we recognize that now, but not at that time. And
was he executed or did he dive out the window?
No, that was the Japanese American that was in the spider that dived out the window rather than talk to the police.
Okay.
So,
I was confused
but Sorge was interrogated and executed, and then he's buried in Tamio Cemetery in Tokyo. And I knew that he was buried there, and I knew he had the wife, and I heard through my friend in the Russian embassy that his wife visited the grave every week. She would go there, and the Russians assisted her, and I said, I would like to meet her. It would be my desire to meet the wife of this great spy. And he says, all right, we'll see if we can arrange it. So I went on that day, I forget what day of the week it was, and we drove to the cemetery, and he said, I can't guarantee you that she will agree to meet with you. So while we were in the car with from the Russian embassy, this Japanese woman came up in another limousine, and he went out and talked to her, and she shook her head and declined to meet with me. So the Russian said, we're sorry, she wishes not to meet. So I never met the widow of Sorge's wife, which I would have loved to. She remained faithful to him all her life. She never remarried, I heard. And the son, I don't know what happened to him. But the Russian government paid pension and gave money to her for the rest of her life. And the Russians finally named the first nuclear icebreaker in Russia was named the Richard Sorge, after Richard Sorge, the great spy, the master spy. So the Russians finally acknowledged what he did and named a nuclear submarine, the first in the world, after Sorge. So
excellent.
They have, so that is my take. And then,
great story. Well, let's end this segment right here, because that's a great place to end it. We've gone into 30 minutes already, and we can continue on here. But that was really good.